All right, well, welcome to the APA formatting workshop. This is workshop 3 in the Writing with APA series put on by the Academic Success Center here at RRC Polytech. So in the previous 2 workshops, citations have been introduced as well as references. So this is just a quick review of kind of the parts of APA that this workshop series is focusing on. And today we're at bullet point number 3. We're in the formatting of the document. What goes into a paper or a document that is formatted in APA style, of course, 7th edition. So often instructors will put onto their assignment instructions or maybe even course outline that all assignments should be formatted using APA 7 guidelines. Excellent. What does that mean? That's what we're going to go over today. Just for a very quick review of what the previous 2 workshops in this series have been about. References, right? References listed alphabetically, a reference list at the end of your assignment. We talked about building references, right? How to start when you need to identify or how to identify the type of a source, where to look for when you're looking for example references, and then kind of going through that who, when, what, where parts of a reference list entry. And as always, we like to refer back to the APA Style website as a great and updated source of information for all things APA 7. All right, but today the focus will be, we're going to very briefly talk about the importance of formatting. Why do we even bother with this? Why is it important? An intro to the formatting guidelines that APA 7th, the APA 7th edition lays out for us. We'll very briefly talk about tables and figures as well, which may go beyond some of you. I don't know, maybe not half of the writing assignments I see, but plenty of writing assignments do at some point necessitate a table or a figure for whatever reason. So we'll go over the formatting of that today in some special cases. And of course, that online APA resource, which I've already mentioned, that'll be sprinkled throughout here as well. All right, so importance of formatting. You may have wondered, why does my instructor care about how I format my assignment? Does it even matter? Why is there so much concern, or why does my instructor care the way that my assignment really looks? Isn't it supposed to be about the information? Well, sure, of course. But formatting does refer to the structure and appearance of a paper, distinct from citations and references, right? So outside of the way that you cite and reference a source, the formatting is the way that the paper or the assignment is laid out. Consistent formatting does matter. It allows your paper to be more cohesive, clearer. It allows you to present that information in a professional way and allows for ease of reading. If you think about how many papers, are submitted by students at the college on an average week, you can imagine that having a clear and consistent format for those papers does help, right, with the clarity and the ease of reading. You can imagine that. And now expand that to other institutions and other fields of research, right? So having consistency in the formatting of information does allow for information to just very easily be accessed and read. So yeah, maybe you wish you could be a bit more creative in the way that you format your paper, but your instructors are adhering to this kind of larger idea that there should be that structure and cohesion with academic information. Now, while the guidelines in this presentation all follow the APA 7th edition, that is what we are teaching and sharing with you today. However, if your instructor provides maybe different requirements for your assignment, it is essential that you follow your instructor's instructions. So for whatever reason, your instructor may feel in some of your courses or even for certain assignments that while the APA 7th edition says to do this for some particular formatting element, they may have a personal preference, or they may feel that an assignment requires something a little bit different, so they ask you to do something differently. So in that case, please always follow those instructions from your instructor. That should be the most the most important thing that you listen to. But if they haven't given any particular instructions about formatting, they just said use APA 7, then great. Then you can follow the instructions as laid out in this workshop. I've seen all sorts of things, instructors wanting even different citations differently or certain formatting things differently. So you really have to pay attention, of course, to your instructions when you are given a written assignment. And this is one very good reason why. All right, so let's very briefly go over some of the kind of core formatting guidelines that APA 7 has provided for us. We're not going to talk in detail about all of the things listed on this slide here, but here's kind of the order of pages. So, or the order, you could almost say the order of parts of a writing assignment. So if you have an APA style paper, it should start with a title page, then an abstract, then the text, that's like the body of the paper that you have written, references, which you know, and as we said in our references workshop, we always say references come at the end of the paper. And that's because, as it says here, most writing assignments at the college that you encounter will only require a title page, the text, and the references. That's most. But you may get in a situation where an instructor requires additional pieces such as footnotes, tables, this would be like the list of tables at the end, the list of figures at the end, or appendices as well. I do see assignments with appendices, figures, and tables. That happens. So if you have some of these elements, this is the order in which you should put them. But as I said, usually it's just title page, text, and references. So the title page, that's the first thing your instructor looks at. So let's get it right. The title page content includes the title of the paper, and you will see that it's bolded. I'm going to show you some small examples, and then we're going to look at one completed title page together in a moment. Then the author or authors. So if you worked with your partner, you write your names. This is affiliation, the name of your program and the name of your college, the name of your course, and the course name comes next, followed by your instructor's name and the due date of the assignment. So some examples here, right? So for the authors, Michael Scott, let's say that was the name of the student. Now, if Michael Scott had also written a paper with another student, Pam Beasley, maybe you're recognizing these names, that's great. Maybe there were 3 authors, right? You and 2 of your classmates, for example. You put an and before the last name. So you can see it's Michael Scott, comma, Pam Beasley, comma, and Jim Halpert. So if there are 3 or more, just make sure you put that and before the last name. Affiliation, just to review, so if you're in the business administration program, this is what it would look like for you. Business administration, comma, that's your program, and the name of your college is Red River College Polytechnic. Don't forget the Nick. I think lots of people just write Polytech. Don't forget, we're a Polytechnic. That's the full name. Then your course code and course name come next. So here's an example, right, COM 1173, colon, communication strategies. So when we put all these elements together, this is what it could look like. You see the paper title, it's bolded, then there's an extra space, then the student name, affiliation, course info, instructor, and due date. Couple formatting things. I hope that you would notice maybe the page number, right? Page numbers begin in APA documents. Page numbers begin on the first page of the document. That's different for different types of citation styles, but in APA, the page number, top right, starting on the title page, which is the first page of your document. Oh, sorry, I was just going to also mention before we continue that this, I hope you would also see it here that it is double spaced. Right? Double spaced, and it's not quite at the top of the page, but it's a little bit down, maybe 3 or maybe a bit more, 5 or 6 spaces or lines from the top of the page. So it's not completely centered in the middle, it's a bit near the top, but those are just some formatting details to pay attention to on your next title page. So moving past the title page, here are some general document layout pieces of info that you need to know. APA actually has 3 recommended fonts and font sizes. So they recommend either using Arial in 11.5 font, Calibri, I think that's how you say it, Calibri in 11-point font, or Times New Roman, but that's in 12-point font. So those are the 3 recommended or approved, we could use that language, approved fonts and sizes in APA 7. Margins, that's the edge around a document. That should all be 1 inch on all sides. Line spacing, double spacing throughout documents. That includes, as I mentioned before, the title page. Your headings also get that double space treatment, and your references page at the end should also be double spaced. Paragraphs, so what you would think of a typical paragraph, that's what APA likes too. Flush left, and the first line of every paragraph is indented with a 0.5 inches, about half an inch. And page numbers, as I mentioned, they start on the first page, top right. If you're unsure about how to do some of these things, right, you come across this often, students being not completely confident using Microsoft Word, it is a really useful skill to have. And I find one of the first places I direct students is to YouTube. Google YouTube, or sorry, you could say Microsoft Word if you're on a PC or a MacBook, and then the skill or the thing that you're trying to do, right? Double space or indent my paragraph or add page numbers or fix my margins or whatever it might be. YouTube is full of little short, 30-second, 1-minute tutorials that can help you, I think, navigate these little Microsoft Word skill building moments that we all have come across at some point or another. So those are just general document layout need to knows, I guess we could say, for APA 7. Next, we're going to talk about headings. So headings are, if you think about, imagine a textbook. Often a textbook has a chapter name, and then within a chapter in a textbook, there are sections of information, and those sections are often identified by a title. So we could call those headings. You might also think in textbooks, headings, sections have subheadings or subsections, sometimes even subsections. It could go on and on and on, depending how complicated the textbook information is or how it's laid out. APA papers do something very similar, where every section of the text and the whole paper actually has a heading. And there are formatting rules because, of course, there's formatting rules for everything in APA. So let's look at an example. I'm just going to skip ahead to this example for a moment. You'll see that those bolded parts there above the paragraphs where it says title of paper, level 2 heading in the introduction, level 2 heading, and then at the bottom, near the bottom, you see level 1 heading. Those bolded text parts are what we're talking about here, right? The titles of sections within your paper. So now let's just go through the formatting rules. Level 1, so that would be like the heading of a section. That we call it a level 1 heading in APA. That will be in title case, which means all the important words are capitalized. It will be centered on your page, and it will be bolded. Now that's a level 1 heading. Now, if that section of information, you want to have a subsection within it, there's, maybe there's a slightly different point or an additional piece of information that you want to separate and put in its own little section within the larger section, then you can give a level 2 heading for that section. This is formatted very similarly. It is title case, it is bolded. The difference is that it is flush left. So when reading an APA paper, as you're working through the pages, every centered heading defines a new section. Any heading that is flush left is a subsection of the current section that you're reading. So by following this pattern, your instructor can understand how you've organized the information, and by choosing kind of good and concise titles for each section, that can also help your instructor or your reader in general follow along with how you've organized the information or how you've presented the information as they read throughout the document. I'll just note before we move on that there are additional levels, but most assignments, right, there's a level 3 heading, level 4, that's where we would get into like the subsections, etc. But most assignments won't require more than level 1 and level 2 headings. Most assignments even just require level 1, but sometimes it's helpful to know that you have that option of the level 2 heading for that subsection if you want. If you want to know more, this PDF will be on our webpage. You can click here on this link to visit the APA style website and learn more about those headings. So there's that example. So now if you look at that, you could see the first section of the paper, which begins with that heading title of the paper, that level 1 heading. I can pop over here. That section has a couple subsections within it. Right? Couple other things to note about headings. The first paragraph of your paper, which is often your introduction paragraph, the heading should be the name of your paper, which is the same as it's going to be on your title page. So the title of your paper will appear twice. It'll appear on your title page and it'll appear as a heading above your introduction paragraph. For the conclusion, right, the conclusion, which is usually the last section or last paragraph of your paper, you use the word conclusion as the heading. Right, so that's a little bit different. Lots of students would assume if you use conclusion, you use introduction for the introduction paragraph. Not quite. Use the title of your paper for the introduction paragraph. Use conclusion for the conclusion paragraph. Those are those headings. All right. Now, just a few more tips about document formatting in Microsoft Word. If you're starting out or you're in the middle of your program, or even if you're near the end, but you've got some papers left, we strongly recommend taking a few moments to set up an APA 7 template in Microsoft Word so that when you are beginning a paper, you can just open Microsoft Word and select a template. Maybe this is something you've never noticed before, but when you open Microsoft Word, there are a lot of pre-made templates available to you as a student, and you can actually create a custom one. So you can create a template for yourself, and then anytime you open Microsoft Word, you can choose to use that template, and then all of your settings are already set up to create a document that follows the APA 7 guidelines that we've talked about so far. So you can set up a title page in there, you could get a reference list going, you could have some headings in there to remind you, whatever pieces of this you want to make sure that you do, but that can just be a little time saver rather than if you're going to write a couple papers, rather than making that same title page over and over and figuring out how to put the page number in the top right-hand corner over and over and over again, you could just do it once, save it as a template, and then you're saving some time down the road. So again, this PDF will be available to you, and you can click here to click on that little link there to watch a short video to create, save, and use a template in Word. And if, as I mentioned before, you're looking for some Microsoft Word skills, maybe you're new to the program or you just don't feel super confident when using it, there's another great link there for a tutorial to some of the basics, Microsoft Word basics. Okay, let's keep going. Lots of information, but a little bit more to go. So tables and figures. Now, tables and figures won't appear in every writing assignment, but I find that students often are throwing things into their writing assignments that they don't even necessarily recognize as what we would call a table or a figure. And knowing if you're doing an APA 7 formatted document for your assignment, knowing how to confidently insert a table of information or a figure, which is also, you can think of it as like an image, and knowing how to do that within the APA 7 guidelines, just make sure you know what you're doing and feel confident about putting that information into the text of your paper. So we're going to look at tables first. So as I said, a table would be like numbers, data, a chart, some sort of representative of data, some sort of visual representative of data, but usually it's in like a chart form or a table form, I guess we could say. All right, so this is an example of a correctly formatted APA 7 table. So let's look at the details here. You can see the table has a number, right? So right at the top of the table, this would be like in your text, right? You can put table 2, and then so this must be the second table in this document that is bolded. Directly underneath it, still that double spacing, right? Always double spaced. Directly underneath, you see the descriptive title. So this is the actual descriptive, or not description, but it's a title that very clearly tells the reader what the information in the table is. So in this case, results of curve fitting analysis examining the time course of fixations to the target. I am not sure what that means, but I'm sure if I was an instructor marking this paper, I would. And then the table itself comes next. Make sure the information is very easy to read. That's a little advice that APA gives. APA likes when things are laid out and they look very clear. Now, following that table, you can add a note with that word. As you can see, it's note in italics with a period, and then non-italics information after, and it's double spaced as well. And a note, as I said here, include only if needed. So if the table requires additional information, you are welcome to put it in a note directly underneath the table. All right, now figures. Now this is maybe more common for some programs, but figures, this is images. If you want to put an image into your text, often, I think we want to do that. Sometimes instructors will even ask for examples or ask you to add figures or images into your essays for whatever reason. And so this is how to do that. Very similar. Give the figure, put the word figure and then the number, right? So figure, this is the first figure in this essay. Put that in bold font at the top. Same descriptive title in italic title case underneath. Then the image itself or the figure. And then underneath, information to clarify or supplement what is provided. So again, a description if necessary. And again, it begins same, it says note there. It's the same as it does in the tables, right? Note with a period and then the information follows. So you can do this in line with your text, right? Now, this is where things get slightly more complicated. Often, when we are using tables or figures, we are taking them from somewhere. Now, just in the same way that when you take information, right, whether that's words, the exact words or ideas from a source, right, which is what we talk about all the time when we are talking about in-text citations and references, you are using the idea of someone else, and how do you represent that you have done that within your paper? Well, you provide an in-text citation and a reference. There are some very similar principles for when you use tables and figures. Now, it is possible, like let's go back to this table. It is possible that the student that wrote this paper here actually did the experiment, whatever this experiment is, and came up with that data themselves. Right? That data was something they created, they figured out, they ran an experiment, they did the test, and these are the numbers, these are the results. If that's true, then that's fine. They did their own work, so they don't have to give credit to anybody else. Same with this picture, I guess, right? Maybe the student who's putting this photo of this incredible cat into their essay for whatever reason, maybe that student took that photo, they have not used it from any other place, so they don't have to give credit. But if that table or this image were from a source, were from somewhere else, it is possible that you need to represent that in your essay. So let's get into how this works. We have to talk about attribution for tables and figures. So to talk about attribution just means, as it says here, acknowledging the creator or owner of the material, right? Who are you attributing that figure to? Who are you attributing that table to? So if you would like to use a table or figure that is not your own, you can, but you need to figure out if there is any licensing for that table or figure. So you need to review the license to check the terms under which people are allowed to use the material. So the creator or owner of the material may have copyrighted it, right? So they may have, for example, this cat. The owner may have copyrighted this image. So what do? right? The license will say, usually you can find the license information maybe at the bottom of a web page, or if it's in a book, you're looking for that little C, that copyright information, the C in the circle, right? You may have seen it before and not paid attention to it. So if the creator or owner has copyrighted the material, then the license will say whether the material can be reproduced, right? Can be used somewhere else, and whether attribution is required. So you may see beside that copyright kind of the name of a license. You might have to Google that license to figure out what that means. Does this mean I can use it or not use it? And do I need to provide attribution, right? Do I need to attribute the creator or owner of this material or not? So some licenses just say it's free, anyone can use it, no attribution required. Some say absolutely not, you can use it, but you must provide attribution if you do, right? There are different types of licenses. So often what can happen here is that students will use a table, right? They'll use a table of information in their document because it supports, maybe it came from a source and it supports what they are saying. It supports, whatever they are writing about or provides examples of what they're writing about. And while they may cite the words about the table, they don't actually cite or reference the table. So this is something that we see often, right? And we want to make sure that any information we use, not just words, right? If we're using pictures or tables or words, we are providing that attribution by following the APA 7 guidelines. Okay, so to review, the license will say and you'll have to look around for that copyright information, but the license will tell you whether or not the material can be reproduced and whether attribution is required. And licensing, by the way, applies to both students and professionals. Sometimes students think, oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Like I'm just a student. That's not true. It does apply to anyone, including students. So if, let's say you want to use the image of a cat, and it's not required. You find the license, it's not required, then you can reproduce and use the image without doing anything, without any reference, without any citation or attribution, nothing. You don't have to do anything. So this is not uncommon. For example, images and clip art from programs like Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint. Like they have a lot of images already saved and ready to use within them. You can use those without any issue. There's no need to cite, reference, or attribute. They are within the program that you have the right to use, right? The college has, we don't have to get too complicated about that, but you have a student account which allows you to use those images without any attribution. So that's one example. Another example, our first image, the cat, comes from a program called, or a website called Pixabay. And Pixabay very specifically has images that are available, again, for free use, right? There is no attribution required. So often, right, students will find images from either within a Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint program or from a site like Pixabay where the license says the image is free. So in those cases, again, you don't have to do anything. It can look just like this. This would be done correctly. Right? This would be done correctly. You wouldn't have to add any information in your reference list about where you got this picture. You wouldn't have to add an in-text citation or provide any attribution information. Nothing. This would be correct because this image came from Pixabay and their license says, use it, no problem. No need to tell the reader of your paper where you got this image. Perfect. However, if the license says, so sorry, no, we need you to provide attribution, then writers should write an APA-style copyright attribution and reference list entry. Okay, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And if the material is discussed in the text, a corresponding in-text citation. So let's look at an example. So this image did not come from a free license, a site with a free license like Pixabay. It did not come from within Microsoft Word. So this is how you would provide an attribution statement, and then I'll show you the reference right after. In your note, right, everything's the same. Figure 1, descriptive title, Lava the sled dog, then the image. Now in your note, which is optional, but this is where you can put the attribution that is required. So you, since it, as it says here, it says note, same thing, from Lava photograph, that's what it is, by whom, the year, and the website you got it. So this is followed after you write the from, then you write again, title, author, year, publisher, location. And then the copyright information at the end. So this is CC by 2.0 point. So that is what you would have seen. That's what the license would have looked like, right, at the end. And of course, there's the URL there. I should have said that as well before the copyright. So we have the title with the photograph, because that's what it is, by whom, the year, location, which includes the website name and the URL, and then that copyright information. So that's how you would provide an attribution. Here's what the reference entry would look like. If you're familiar with references, this should look pretty familiar. We have the author, again, right? Denali National Park and Reserve, the year, the title, and the location information. So very similar. If you had to provide an in-text citation, it would be done the same way, author and year. So in this case, Denali National Park and Preserve and 2013. Now, it's possible that you won't have to use figures or tables in your papers, but if you do want to, and if you think that this would be beneficial for you to put an image or to put a chart or a table, and you find one that you think, this would be great, it would really help me to be able to put this in, and that would allow me to discuss my point more clearly, to provide additional examples that I can then share for whatever point within your paper, within your assignment, there is a way to do it, and you can follow the APA 7 guidelines as laid out here. If you have questions about copyright, if of an image or a table that you find, I encourage you to book an appointment with the Writing Center, or of course to contact the library staff at the college, and they would be able to clarify for you if you have questions about copyright or licensing. Absolutely. All right, now just to wrap up very quickly here. We're a little bit over time, I apologize. But navigating online APA resources, we strongly encourage you to check out the APA Style website. This website has the style and grammar guidelines, and there's one dedicated entirely to paper format. So check that out. Again, if you want to review any of the information from today's presentation, or you want to go a little further and check out other formatting, such as formatting of appendices or something like that. Also on the APA website are a bunch of, some sample papers. So if you have questions about how it all looks when it's all put together, checking out a sample paper can be a really nice way to get a full picture of what you're seeing. To summarize this presentation, following formatting guidelines helps you to produce a cohesive, clear, and professional document that is easy for your reader to follow. This presentation summarized formatting guidelines according to APA 7, but don't forget to read your instructions and follow your instructor's requirements very carefully when it comes to formatting. We talked about order of pages, title page, document layout, headings, and more. We encourage you to check out that APA Style website for additional questions as well. And there's a link in here at the end of this PDF as well if you want to check out more about tables and figures. Thank you so much for attending this presentation about APA formatting. It was the third workshop in this APA series. So I hope we'll see you next week for our final workshop on language and style within APA 7. So thank you again. I'll pause the recording here.